In terms of like players that people know maybe aren't as sort of hot on signing, because I think the other big target to speak about, like legitimate one that we've heard consistently, is Raheem Sterling. Matt Law was just literally reporting before we recorded this that there's been contact with Thomas Tuchel. I made sort of a long video about Sterling, the pros and cons. I lean more towards pro, but that's purely because I think he's a good player, and I think that he's proven himself in the Premier League, and maybe more so than other attackers we've bought. He sort of ticks a lot more boxes, but I understand the other point of view where, you know, either if you look at his sort of spells of big misses, or maybe you're looking at his age and wages that could be brought in. I just want to know your opinion, because the attack is such an awkward area for Chelsea to invest in, I think, because so much has gone wrong that I think there's a lot of people now who are just so scared for Chelsea to buy anyone in attack, because we've the last few years we've looked at players like Werner, we've looked at players like Lukaku as the solution, and it hasn't turned out that way. So I can understand why people are maybe not falling for it on Sterling.
I mean, yeah, for sure, man. My thing is, I've got a lot of respect for Sterling. He clearly is a great player. But I think a part of observation I'm seeing is that it feels like a lot of the new targets we're looking at kind of are like identical replacements for players that could be outgoing. And I'm not here to say that, you know, Pulisic and Sterling are on the same level. Of course not. You know, Sterling is a better player at this point in time than Pulisic. But for me, it's just more, you know, it's more than just having a quality guy playing in a role. You need to have that. It's symbiotic. You know, you need to have, you know, the manager, the coach, the system getting the best out of your personal game alongside, you know, the quality you're bringing to that system. And I'm looking at, you know, a lot of the criticisms over like the past 18 months of not having anyone that can dribble, not having anyone that can create. And we've always had these players. I mean, you know, if people telling me that Kai Havertz, Mason Mount, Ziyech aren't players that can play over the top and play vertically, I mean, you're absolutely wrong, because of course they can do that. They all got an incredible weight of ball, weight of pass. But the bottleneck I see is that the system doesn't necessarily look to get the best out of those talents. And I think what's quite interesting is that we didn't score one counter-attacking goal last season, which is, I mean, it's so weird. I did like a reaction video to all the goals we scored. I didn't see one counter-attack, but it didn't even resonate to me that we didn't score from one. And that kind of gives you like an immediate glimpse and example of how the attacking players aren't necessarily complementing what Tuchel wants from the system, because if we can't get one attacking goal from that type of players we have in the team who've been literally doing that their whole careers, then it's telling me that the system is a little bit of a bottleneck. So if I'm looking at Pulisic, someone that's always been used as a wing back, that plays as a cam, has played as a false nine, I feel like Pulisic and Sterling are kind of in that same family of player in terms of like profile, you know, guys that know how to make runs inside the box, that have good ability in tight areas, etc., etc. That's the only comparison. I'm not saying the level's the same, but what they can do is kind of like, you know, a similar profile. Yeah, I've never seen Pulisic's profile really used in the team like that for it to be a real strength. So I just find it interesting when I'm looking at guys like Rafinha replacing Ziyech, for example, potentially. I'm not really seeing too much of a difference. You know, I understand, I'm sure, you know, Rafinha is playing for a lesser team and Leeds in a Bielsa system. Of course, if you're a great player playing with freedom like that, you're going to stand out, which he's done easily. But I say that Rafinha is on a different level to Ziyech? No. And I think if someone was to say that, I feel like you're just taking what you're seeing with us over the past 18 months at face value and thinking that's the end all and be all, which is not the case, you know, especially when these are all guys I was watching regularly before they signed for us. And this is when immediately I kind of got hit with this like confliction during like the early parts of like Tuchel's time here, thinking, okay, I know what these guys can do, but I'm not seeing what they can do translated in our system. And I just find it interesting that we're going for profiles in Sterling and Rafinha, who for me, they have to receive the balls out wide in space. I mean, that's what needs to be done. Rafinha isn't a cam. He doesn't receive in the channels. Sterling doesn't receive in the channels. Yeah, he might move and operate there, but you see how he plays for Man City. He's receiving wide on the right, wide on the left as well too. And I just think that if we're signing these profiles, there needs to be an adaptation on how we break teams down in the final thirds, because otherwise, you know, why not just go for more players suited to playing in the channels in the half spaces that would maybe complement playing more of like a slower, more like contained possession game. So this is my only worry at this point in time, and this is like a worry at this point in time. I could see things in pre-season where we see adaptations, new things done that would completely change what I'm saying right now, and I'm kind of hoping I do. But my current opinion, based on just the reality of what I've seen over 18 months and the players we're looking at, they kind of look like maybe what Ziyech 2.0, Pulisic 2.0, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to translate into 10 times performance from players where Raheem Sterling will cost you 50 mil. He's already on 300k a week. He'll be signing for more money. You're looking at Rafinha, leaves for 65 mil. You know, yeah, he bangs in the goals for them, but just that money and the expense, I need to hope that it translates into output on the fields, because if the system's going to remain a bottleneck where expensive signings like this aren't able to necessarily translate their game and hit top form, because, you know, players at this level playing for big teams, they look at the stats every week. They want to be getting the most assists, most goals, etc., etc. And I think that's currently one thing that I haven't seen this system be able to produce for any of the players we have. So I think there's definitely question marks for me in terms of what Tuchel's ideas are going to be. But I've got an open mind to see what he does. But I just personally think there has to be something different, because if it's just signing the same profiles who are a bit better, maybe depending on who people are, how people want to see it, and it's literally giving them the same system, I'm not expecting fireworks to come from that. And I just think that there's this easy trap to fall into thinking of, you know, grass is greener mentality. It will come here and instantly make it better because all the hype that went into the build up before they were signed. I mean, I don't know. I need to see something more.
Yeah, I think that's sort of my evolution over recent months, looking at the attack and where I think fundamentally things have gone wrong. Because, you know, in earlier parts of the season, I was looking at players' productivity and I was saying, why is an X player getting the same numbers as, say, a Rafinha, say, a Jared Bowen? But then I think the stat that really stung the most about where Chelsea have gone wrong was XG understat, was the final Premier League table, which showed that only, other than Chelsea, only Leicester and Aston Villa outperformed their XG more than us, which kind of really clashes with this perception that Chelsea fans have that we are a really wasteful team, and only if we had someone who bagged in the goals. And it's not to say that those, like, I think that is a problem, say, in bigger games. So like the League Cup final against Liverpool, where we have a lot of chances and don't take them. But those type of games are not the norm for Chelsea. Like, they're not those games where it's counter-attacking and we've got lots of space to open up, where players like Lukaku last season or Pulisic or Mount or Havertz can really find that space and really go at teams. But that's not... If you're using those games as like the barometer for what's wrong with Chelsea, I mean, I think we were having the same conversation last summer, and that's what led us to Lukaku.
Yeah.
And I just, that's
and
the question.
And at the same time, we all had ideas that maybe we're going to see like little tweaks and differences made for Lukaku coming, which shouldn't end up being the case. So sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to quickly add that one in there.
No, absolutely, because that's kind of, I mean, you sort of led on to sort of the final question I was going to go towards, and I think this links to why I'd like to see a Dembele come in. But with any attacker, it's what I keep on saying. I think that the idea of the saviour, the guy that's just going to come in and change things, I think Lukaku was supposed to be that, and that's where that idea for me kind of died, because not only I think as the game changed in the Premier League, where individuals aren't as important or aren't as relied upon as the system. I think, you know, Lukaku and Cristiano Ronaldo, Ronaldo had a good season goals wise, but like that sort of theory of the system over the individual is kind of a lot more prevalent at the top level of the game than it maybe was before. And that's an interesting discussion to see whether that should be the case or whether that's actually accurate. But in the case of Chelsea, whatever attacker we bring in, I think if Tuchel still persists with this really controlled, and he says it himself, risk-averse style of football, I don't think Chelsea are going to get that better. I maybe I'm wrong, but I can't believe that over 300 million worth of talent that we've bought since Jan 2019 are all awful. Like, despite people's frustrations with Lukaku, I kind of rolled my eyes, even with some people I respect and listen to in the Chelsea community, trying to make out that getting Lukaku to score goals was this like unsolvable Rubik's Cube, when I'm like, this guy has spent literally his whole career scoring goals. I don't buy the idea that at Chelsea
exactly
it's like this incredible sort of like thing where this player who's been productive has to kind of radically change for us just
And
because of Tuchel.
I feel it's been the same energy that has literally been implanted on every single striker we've signed. And there's a reason why only a few have really stood up. You know, Drogba, Diego Costa, Anelka. I think these are like the three main guys in 20 years, basically, of forwards we've signed that have really been main guys. And that's because they had components and players in the system around them to get the best out of their game. I mean, even when Drogba first signed those first 2 seasons, you know, I was at Stamford Bridge every week when I was a kid. This guy was getting booed and this guy wasn't liked as much. You know, I think that season when Shevchenko came and when Drogba, I don't know, not even that, to be more accurate, when Mourinho in the 05 or 06 season started to use Crespo and Drogba together, that's when Drogba had more freedom to do his thing, which then evolved to Shevchenko coming in to replace Crespo, where Drogba got like 32 goals in a season. And then literally that was the straw that broke the camel's back for Drogba, where, you know, he wasn't just used as a target man fending off two strikers all the time to be able to, you know, get the goals. Diego Costa had Cesc Fabregas behind. You know, Fabregas before Mourinho, second half of that title-winning season, decided we're going to grind out wins. Fabregas would have broken the Premier League records quite easily, quite early, if we continued a more, you know, the same approach we had during the start. I think it was that Everton game where we lost to them 4-2, and Mourinho's like, no, we're going to route one here. We're going to grind out wins to get this. And it's just like the principle that binds our successful strikers together is a system that complements their game. I mean, Diego Costa, I mean, let's not pretend this guy was super technical on the ball. He was good, of course, and he could link up, but he still relied on quick service to find his runs. And that is the principle that strikers need. And we've signed a lot of guys over the years, a lot of these speed merchants in behind, who we've never really ever used to, like, in a proper way to get the best out of their game. And, you know, this whole thing, I think if you like, Arnie, and maybe it's something I personally see, like a personal observation. I think that when you're a fan, 99% of the time you're only watching your team most of the time. So you're not really watching other teams in the same league as you, and you're most definitely not watching other teams in other leagues outside. And I think that's when I see maybe lazy arguments like, oh, maybe Serie A tax, Bundesliga tax. That doesn't paint the most accurate picture, and that's like more of a casual take if you're not really that invested to really know. And I just think the thing with Lukaku, which I kind of have sympathy for him, managers understand him like Martinez and Antonio Conte. You know what I mean? Let's not pretend that Conte is not revered here. You know, how was Conte, a world-class manager, able to get Lukaku firing on form again? Because he looked to get the best out of his game. And Lukaku, I think the thing that's always worked against him, especially in this country too, is that they just see him as a big beast up front because he's got like superhuman strength. They don't see it as, this guy for me is like a Vardy-esque striker with the bonus of having super strength to make him even that separates him and elevates him. You see when he plays for Belgium alongside Hazard, De Bruyne and top players, how he's the focal point that scores goals and can combine with them. You saw at Everton when Martinez was allowing him to receive out wides, to also show other parts of his game too, which is his ability to take on his man, which is something we've never been able to see under Tuchel, because he's just been isolated up front in the middle with no one around him. And the few times we was able to see that, you know, games versus Aston Villa and other games, we saw a different Lukaku. So I don't even care about the interview. Everyone knows my thoughts and opinions on this. I'm not changing it. I don't even care about the interview. I'm sorry. The main principle for me is that the system did not do anything to get the best out of him. And the thing with Lukaku is that he proved his quality. He doesn't need 5 chances to get a goal like everyone else did. You know, a lot of the goals he scored were match winners for us. I mean, look at the 2 goals against Aston Villa. I've not seen any striker since maybe Diego Costa who has that type of conviction behind the shot where he doesn't need too many opportunities to bury them away. So if there was more done to suit him, things would have been a different story, but there was no willingness. So this is why I don't really mind that him and Tuchel decided, listen, it's best that we both part ways. I think it's actually the most amicable adult thing to do, to be honest with you. But, you know, this notion that he doesn't suit us or fit, I didn't try, is absolute nonsense, which I'll never accept, because I'm going to go off all the games I watched with my own 2 eyes. I'm going to go off all the runs that was never found, poor service inside the box, lack of support around him for him to link up, and the misuse of the player, where Tuchel, as we know from the start of the season, kind of saw him as the battering beast guy up front, which I'm just kind of thinking, I mean, you're looking at Lukaku in this frame. Has he ever been a pressing striker? Absolutely not. And if people, I know they're using this really lazy argument I've seen on social media of, oh, Lukaku himself said when he came here that he can do this, he can do that. Of course he can, but you got to use all of that. We only just use certain parts of that, and it didn't suit or fit or do anything. So I don't know. This is why I've got reservations about the moves we're making in the window, because I've seen a history so far of misuse of attacking players. And I don't know. I need to just see what happens in pre-season. Hopefully things could be done differently, but feels like a lot of status quo signings that maybe they could get 1 or 2 extra goals, but I don't see that translating in us winning more cups or, closing the point gap to City and Liverpool considerably, to be honest with you.
I do think Tuchel, I think he's got rightly so much credit. The transformation into the Champions League win. I think the way he handled himself in the post-sanction sort of weeks, where I think a lot of people saw him as kind of a statesman and a spokesman for the club, and I don't think that should ever be forgotten. Right, that was a very scary point of the club's history, even if it was only for a short period. And I think that the way he handled himself and the way he's improved players as well, there's no denying that. And I think Tuchel has absolutely got the ability to take Chelsea, I think, to a Premier League title. I do think he is an elite coach. I don't think there's, but the one thing I would say, and I think that heading into next season, is without Lukaku, who I think became quite an easy scapegoat, I think, for a lot of people. I think he was able to become kind of a villain within the squad, which I think is why he had to move on, because it was just unhealthy, right? It was just not a nice environment. But I do think if Tuchel gets the players he wants and we see similar issues again, I think there's going to be a lot of scrutiny, and particularly on the Abraham situation, which I just don't get it. I
agree.
And I think the longer Tuchel's attack doesn't work, the more that decision makes no sense. People turn around and go, well, it's just Tuchel's decision, but it's that doesn't mean Jose made bad decisions. Pep has made bad decisions in his career just because you're a top coach.
Messi, for example.
Yeah. It's just because you're a top coach doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. It's just, that's the big frustration for me, is over the attack, and I think Tuchel needs to resolve it, because if he doesn't, I think he'll rightly get a lot more criticism next year.
Yeah, and at the same time, with what you're saying, I feel like with sensitive subjects like that, it's so easy to get misconstrued. We're not saying that we got no hope that anything's going to change or nothing can improve. It's just about, I'm a logical guy. When I make decisions and have opinions, it's based on the past I've seen before me and my knowledge of how players work as well too. That doesn't mean that I'm not open to new things being done or new tweaks coming, and I think that's what a real preseason could be there for. But yeah, come on, it's just simple for me. Out of 6 attacking players, only 2 really doing bits in Havertz and Mount. If I'm just using pure football reasoning to explain my points, it's because they're 2 cams who are the most suited to receiving in the channels and the half spaces. No one else outside of them plays that way. And it's just interesting that even though we have the profiles to maybe have suited that, we just preferred on the other profiles of maybe structure and containment, which does work. And I think it works in the big games. But my theory is the reason why we struggle offensively is because in the Premier League, teams are just more willing to not press. They're more willing to sit back. In the Bundesliga, I get the vibe is that it's more for the fans. So you're not going to just play with 18% possession against a big team. You're looking at other leagues as well too, where they use other tactics as well to compete. It's not this, for me, maybe I'm being cynical, but this basic thing of just reverting deeper, keeping your blocks low, not pressing the centre backs and stuff. And I think this ultimately is the strategy aspect that gets found out, because in the system, the reason why we perform in big games is because teams will press us. And that's why we spend so much time on, passing routines out the back. And that's why we're incredible at doing that. But outside of the big teams, most teams know we can play through their press, so they're not going to press us. And then it changes the entire complexion of the game. And I just find it so fascinating that unless we get that first goal by any means possible, somehow, we are not able to influence the game as much as we should in our favour. And I'm saying this relative to the fact that, okay, we're the 3rd best team currently in the country. This is what's stopping us winning the title and really challenging. I'm not saying it in terms of like, oh, this is proof that everything we do is crap and bad. It's just a relative point based on our position and where we are. And I just personally think with the profiles there, especially when we've come up against a lot of teams underneath us, so we've, lost a lot of leads. I mean, and near the end of the last season too, as the season was approaching again, another dip in form as well too, where we're conceding goals and we're opened up like crazy all of a sudden. It felt like literally the same thing as how our last season ended. More European success, international success as a club, but no real progression at all, even though the wage bill's gone up and we've added more players to the team. So, yeah, I just really hope that things are done properly. But I guess I wish I'd feel more confident if it was possible to secure like a director of football immediately to help with Tuchel and okay, this is how we're going to do things. So it'll be very interesting to see what we do. And yeah, I just keep saying I have an open mind, basically.
Before we wrap up, because I don't want to keep you too long, just kind of predictions for the season. Because I mean, the general vibe I'm getting at the moment is, and it seems to be internally at the club, it's kind of a little bit like Frank's first season where there isn't kind of lofty expectations of a title when it's kind of just secure, maintain Champions League qualification. And I don't suspect you feel any different about that.
I think, yeah, definitely Champions League football secured. I think as they mentioned in the quotes in like Matt Law's article yesterday, depending on certain maybe players we can sign, potentially something could happen, but the main focus right now is making sure Champions League is secured, which could be harder now with like Spurs, Arsenal. Looks like they're continuing to rise, and they only just missed out by a few points, so it's not like they're levels behind where they used to be now. And then I don't know if Ten Hag is able to attract and sign someone, which could happen because United have money. How we're seeing them now could be changing once this window comes to an end. So competition's got a lot harder now. It's to get Champions League spots, and I think maybe we're closer to those teams now currently compared to the guys above us. But again, I don't have strong opinions because it's going to change depending on the business we do and what we do during pre-season and a lot of variables. So yeah, I'm just taking baby steps at the moment, man, and let's hope that maybe like we can sign at least like a handful of like first choice signings, instead of like going down that list to mediocrity, basically.
Players that actually upgrade the first team, players that could actually come in straight away.
Yeah.
I mean, particularly in central midfield. I mean, I think that sadly has been forgotten, and we could spend many more minutes speaking about central midfield because that's obviously an issue that has been going on for so long and maybe could be resolved in a dream scenario this summer. But thank you so much, Nini, for joining me once again today. Before we wrap up, just give you the chance to shout out where people can find your work. Got stuff coming up on the channel, I assume, over the summer?
Yeah, of course, man. Very busy summer. You guys want to find me on Twitter, it's at NiiNiiFC, and on YouTube, obviously Blue Lines TV.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for watching. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again very soon. All the best.